I'm Helmut Asche. I'm an economist born here in Hamburg, and since then working in various places, which makes me appropriate to do the moderation. I will keep the credentials short as we really have to stop. I was given firm instructions to stop a couple of minutes past 8 because the deputy mayor will then be around. So I briefly introduce my two panelists. To my left is Dr. Edward Brown, who is the Director of Policy Advisory Services at the African Center for Economic Transformation in Accra, and has long worked at the World Bank. And he will speak out for the against China age model. To my left and to your right is Helmut Reisen, who is Director of Research at the OECD Development Center in Paris, and on top of this, Professor at the University of Bale, who will speak in favor of the pro-China position, which is not visible from his traits, but he will do that. You see the proposition on screen. Is the Chinese age model better than Paris? What we will now do, and I have done this procedure already once last year in Midrand, and I assure you it is sheer fun. It will be with several rounds of voting. So you will be asked right after this if you are in favor of the proposition that is that the Chinese age model is actually better than Paris, or if you are against, or if you are completely undecided. Which at your educational level should be the exception to the rule. And then we will have more rounds of voting, at least one at the end. If the initial statements of the two proponents are sufficiently antagonistic, we will have even an intermediate round. And the idea why the PEGNet organizers once invented the formula is to sociologically observe how the voting results change after the debate. So one of the two will have won, in quote unquote. But it is obviously not the person, it is the plausibility of the proposition. So in about 30 seconds, I let you vote on this. The inconvenience is that at this stage, you do not know what the Chinese age model or the Paris age model actually is, or what the two gentlemen think about it. So you vote on your prior understanding or prejudice that you currently have, and then you will be wiser towards the end. That is the idea. You will like it. There are brilliant young people around able to count, so please raise your hands with the cards. In the first place, the green card is asked for those who think that the Chinese age model is better than the Paris or alias, aka the Western model. So I just show the card. I'm not allowed to vote. Who is thinking that the Chinese model, age model, not development model, age model is better than the Paris model? Please raise your hands. Justin is voting in that sense. That hardly comes as a surprise. Got the numbers? Who is against the proposition and is thinking that the Paris model is rather better than the Chinese model? Okay, thanks a lot. And who has absolutely got no clue? These are the undecided people. I see even professors among them, but that is fine. Okay, so we have, oh yeah, that is a very clear vote. So we have a clear majority for the no, variant, and a balanced one, but it's half for the pro-Chinese model, and another 18 votes undecided. So Helmut, this is a challenge for you. Floor is yours. Try to reverse the tide in 5 minutes.
Okay. Thank you, Helmut, for inviting me. I think it is a challenge also because your question is very puzzling. First of all, I'm from Paris, but I'm against Paris. I'm actually working in Issy-les-Moulineaux, which nobody knows of you probably, which is a suburb, and I live in a suburb. The OECD, of course, stands for the Paris Declaration, and that may explain the title Paris. The other puzzling thing is there is no such thing as a Chinese ACET model. So we have to get things a bit straight here. First of all, you asked, what do you understand under the Paris model? Let's call it the Western approach to aid, to development cooperation. And here I would say that the Western approach starts from some objectives that it has. These objectives are fairly close to the Millennium Development Goals, poverty reduction, global public goods, health, and so on. So it gives the Western aid a sort of sectoral focus which has been in the last decades in the social sectors. Another element of the Western approach is usually, I see people from development banks here, but usually it is very much grant finance. So it's based on grants and much less on credits if you look at ODA. Another feature is that there is policy conditionality. That has to be the case if you want to reach social objectives. Money is fungible, and you want to get a certain outcome, you are required to rely on some conditionality. You also have to rely on conditionality to get the voters' support in donor countries. So I think another feature is that there is fairly little donor presence on the ground in the poor countries. While there has been, over the last decades, the building up of a huge donor bureaucracy. So many of the initiatives that have been started, including the Paris Declaration, Accra, Busan, and so on, are very much donor bureaucracy driven. And I can tell you I have seen it from very close. It's really very much DAC and World Bank driven, these initiatives, and whatever they say about or proclaim about developing countries engaging in a dialogue, it's always the same candidates. It's the good countries, it's Ghana, it's Colombia, Egypt, who in the past who have been asked to overtake some roles, so to give it sort of appearance that this is a balanced approach where ownership, one of the major principles of the Paris Declaration, is really respected. But you cannot often respect ownership in countries where there is no press freedom, where the middle income sectors are underdeveloped, where information cannot really be digested. So often these principles, and there is also alignment with donor, with the programs in poor countries, harmonization, results orientation, and mutual accountability, they sound very nice, but on close inspection they are pipe dreams in my understanding. Now, so I call this Western approach the development assistant approach. To distinguish from Paris the Chinese approach. The Chinese approach, in my view, is continues a tradition that has already been begun by the Japanese before. And I call it the development investment approach. It's actually not based on charity, it's not based on Christianity principles, it's based, like Adam Smith, Butcher, Brewer, and Baker, on naked self-interest. The naked self-interest is to oil the growth machine, in the specific case of China, to get a secure access to raw materials that often are prohibited. For example, if they want their oil companies to buy up an American oil company, it's not possible, it's capital protectionism. Pipelines are circumvented through China, the Iraq war, and many other things that happened in the past have convinced the Chinese authorities that it is very important to secure raw materials to sustain their growth process by going into Africa. Now, what they do is actually very good for the world, because integrating 2 billion people by buying the stuff that they need on the spot markets, rather than investing in increasing the supply of oil, food, and so on, would be a disaster for us all, and we would have to fight with much higher raw material prices than we do currently. The financing mix with which this broad package of development cooperation, which is based on trade, investment, learning programs, on-the-job training, is financed either through export credits very much, and not only China, but also India, Brazil. Export credits are very important. Then credit packages that mix concessional credits with some others, and then also barter trade or barter arrangements, such as the so-called Angola mode of cooperation, where there is a license in oil companies or an equity share against the delivery of resources, and in turn there is the development of infrastructure, mostly in the transport and energy sectors. Now these sectors, these infrastructures, this is the hard infrastructure that Justin Lin was talking about, is of course what Africa lacked very much, and so I'm close to come to the impact, but I will do so in the next step. This was just to present my view of the different approaches.
Great, thanks a lot, Helmut. So, Helmut has given on both, on the critical aspects of the Paris model and on the positive aspects of the Chinese model, a clearly numbered list. I don't have to rerun it.